Welcome everybody to Motherhood, raw, full but true, with me, your host, Rainbow Goddess. So welcome to episode 3 of Motherhood, raw, full but true on belonging. We are here with 4 incredibly brave mothers, Amira, Dawn, Maria and Lisa. And we're going to share with you our thoughts and feelings and experiences, raw, full but true, on this sense of belonging in motherhood. So the first thing I want to share before we get into this is this idea about culture. So we've just been speaking before we've come onto this recording and looking at the difference with culture. And I know that in an African village somewhere, there's a tribe that have this idea that if somebody starts behaving in a dysregulated way, in a negative way, in a dysfunctional or destructive way, that it's not the fault of the person. They attribute the cause of the behavior to something going wrong in the fabric of community. And so then they say that this person has forgotten that they belong. And so the work is then how to remedy the community and how to remind this person that they belong. So they do that ceremonially. They circle around this individual and remind them how lovable they are, how loved they are, how important they are, and how much they belong. And this then seems to heal. So there's something so profound about this sense of cultural difference when it comes to belonging. You know, we live in a Western, individualized, competitive culture that kind of pitched you against each other from a very early age, and so it's really difficult. And then when we become mothers, we've got these cultural myths that say the institution of motherhood means that one woman is responsible solely for the upbringing of the child. And actually we touched on that at the beginning when we were chatting, me and you, Amira, didn't we, about women who are in nuclear families or in marriages actually feel like they're in single parent relationships, because when they need to go out to the shop or when they want to go out with their mates or something, the dad thinks he's doing them a favor if he babysits the children. And this is evidence of this institution of motherhood showing itself, where actual fathers don't feel responsible for their own kids because they're so acculturated to think that the mums are solely responsible. So there's so much going on, like profound differences in culture that impact us. And unless we have exposure to those other cultures, we don't understand, we don't get it. So this is the revelation, what we're trying to get into today. We're going to share these mothers' experiences in a bid to shine a light on what's really going on in this individualistic, institutionalized mothering. Some of the women in this call today have had experiences of raising children in community and not in community, so we'll see the differences there. And then some of the other women are grandparents now. Another woman's just left her community and been relocated to escape an abusive relationship, so she had a network, now she's not. So there's lots of different shades of these stories that we're going to get into. And so let's meet you all, brave mamas. Let's just go around and introduce you. So I invite you to unmute Amira. And Amira is based in Liverpool. And she has a daughter who's 29 and also a son who is 11. So she's had children 18 years apart and a few marriages, married with a son, but that broke down and she's remarried, but still existing like a single mother because she lives separately from her spouse. And they also have their own children to deal with. So Mira, just give us a little flavor about this for you, this idea of belonging and why you're on this podcast. And we'll get into a bit of a deeper sharing later, but just a little brief synopsis.
Okay, so when I had like my daughter, I wouldn't say I was in a community then, and that was a very traumatic experience, very solitary. And like other women, I in that situation, I got very severe postnatal depression, and it was so difficult that I actually don't go into it because it's just traumatic listening to it for people. And that over the years has driven me to recognize the importance of supporting women and holding the space for women. and, finding your tribe, basically. Now, when my daughter was 7, I became Muslim, just briefly. And that was when I discovered what I felt was my tribe and my community. And I really felt the difference. Then when I had my son in that community, it was a completely different experience. So when you were mentioning your experiences abroad, you mentioned you both went to Egypt. So I'm in a community with different types of Muslims from different countries, but they all recognize and hold on to trying to support one another. So, for example, when I had my son, we always try to do cooking rotas for each other. That's just one example. It's only a small thing, but it's monumental. So, like someone cooking for you every day for maybe 2 weeks, there's so much love that goes into that. It makes you feel so held and supported. Um, that is something that, you know, impacted me so much, and I appreciate now when I see other people. We'll do rotas for people if they've moved house or if they're elderly, because I know how important that is, like, to feel supported by your community. So I've had two completely different experiences in and out of community. And like you said, Bo, it doesn't matter how much you study things or healing modalities. If you haven't got other people there for you to pick you up when you need picking up off the floor, then it doesn't really count for anything, does it? So you need to be in a community where you can be your authentic self. And it's not easy asking for help as well. Even now in my community, I struggle to ask for help, but I'm grateful that I know there are women out there who, they're observant, and that is something that wasn't there before. So I've really experienced two very different things, and I can see the harms of when you're on your own and the benefits of when you're held by a sisterhood. So that's what I wanted to bring, really.
Thank you so much, Mira. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. And yeah, I read a research article actually about, the Islamic culture and how within many Asian families, they don't actually have language for single mother because it doesn't exist as a concept. So if a mother is divorced or widowed, she gets back absorbed into the family and lives with the family home. And if the parents aren't there, then the brother's responsible or the cousin's responsible. So they don't actually have a word for single mother, which I thought was very, very interesting. And again, speaks to these profound differences with an individualistic and a more communal type of acculturation being brought up in that. So thanks for being on, and really hope that we can get into a bit more of the hard time that you had when we go a bit deeper. So thanks, Amira, and welcome. So next we move to Maria, and Maria is a grandma now. Maria has one 30-year-old daughter and 2 grandchildren, and early on, the separation came because she was in an abusive relationship, and then now she's a grandma to 2 grandchildren, making attempts to repair what happened when she became a mother, because of this issue of cultural abandonment. No elders, no one around checking man, and I think that impacts the amount men feel like they can get away with as well. And this is just emerging as I'm speaking. Correct me if it's not resonating for you, but yeah. And Maria has just been to Egypt and experienced these differences in culture, and I think that's been quite challenging for you to integrate. So,
Yeah.
so welcome to this podcast, Maria. Thanks for being here and for being brave. I appreciate it. If you could, yeah, just open up, introduce yourself to listeners, and let them in a little bit onto your journey. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Maria. Um, yeah, as both said, I'm a grandmother now. My daughter's 30. When I had her, it was a very difficult time. I had postnatal depression. I was in a relationship, but it was very abusive. I didn't have a good relationship with my mum. She didn't support me, and it was very hard getting, childcare. I was living in a flat alone, well, with my partner, but he worked a lot or he was drinking. And I just felt really isolated. I didn't have many friends. It was just a really difficult time, and things got better over the years, but then I had a breakdown when my daughter was little, and I feel like I caused her a lot of trauma too, which I think is coming out now in our relationship, which is quite difficult. She kind of has a lot of boundaries with me. I'm allowed to see my grandchildren, but separately from her and things, which is really hard for me and hateful, but I just respect what she wants. And as long as I can see my grandchildren, that's fine. So I live alone now. I'm quite isolated. I do work in the community. I do sound therapy and women's kind of circles and things. So that does help me. But then I kind of go home and feel alone again. I try to travel a lot to help that, and so yeah, I've just been to Egypt, and I felt so held there and honoured by the men, and really seen. Nothing was too much trouble. I was getting supported and helped with everything. I mean, some of them had ulterior motives, but that's normal, I suppose. And I come back here, and again, it's the same thing, just like every night, just watch Netflix or something. Not much to do if I don't see my grandchildren. It's just lonely, and I've been doing a lot of inner work and healing, but as Bo said, it's the culture, something needs to change, and I feel really strongly about that something needs to change, because I've had enough of living this way. I don't want to live this way anymore. I want to feel held and loved. I want to feel like I have community, sisterhood, and brotherhood too. I want our men to start supporting and helping us more. I mean, I carry big gongs and equipment for work, and I do it all alone and breaking me back doing it. Trying to help and heal other people, and I'm not getting it. So yeah, I feel really strongly about it, and I want to heal the relationship with me and my daughter. Want us to be a family unit that cooks together and goes out with our grandchildren together instead of kept separately. So sorry if I went on too much. Thanks for hearing me.
It's really beautiful to hear you share so honestly, Maria, and I resonate deeply with that. Like, I've just asked for a diagnosis of ADHD because when I'm on my own in the house, I get so restless and there's so many things to do, but I just go round and round and round. And then when I'm with people, I'm functioning, highly functioning. I can be funny, I can do this with the kids. And, when we have these environments where we're together, I feel like there's a bit of an afterglow, but then I drop into this lonely space like you. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. Like the last couple of weeks, because we went to Egypt as well. We were around people, and the days when we weren't, I noticed it. And then we got back, and I was so well resourced because I hadn't cooked or cleaned all week. And my mum picked us up from the airport, and we were there. And my son woke up early. He played with his granddad, and I could stay in bed and sleep. By that night, we were back at home, and instead of going to bed, I had the energy to clean the fridge, but I put the dog water in the fridge as well. And then I turned round because I'd been with people so much. I turned round to laugh with someone, but no one was there. And then it was this moment of like, wow, just even that, sharing a laugh with someone. So instead of it being a laugh and dopamine and feel good factor, it was like the negative, like, oh, I'm on my own again, like a depressive moment instead of a joyful moment. And then the other thing about how often do I clean my fridge? Like, I have these ideas that I'm lazy, but it's not that. It's because I've been resourced. Often I'm so overwhelmed and under resourced. I'm not lazy. I'm just overwhelmed and under resourced. That's why it's every 2 years I clean my fridge because it takes that long. So yeah, something about that, like we're not. I really feel this deeply, and I mean, other people cope very well, I think, on their own. But when I've stepped into motherhood, I've noticed it more than ever. Like I can't flourish. I don't feel right. I feel a bit agitated, when I'm on my own. So, and the other thing, what you've spoke to, like serving your community, like you're putting yourself out there, you've invested, goodness knows how much money in all them gongs,
Yeah.
and I've just noticed that you're going to do a through the night one, like
Yeah,
where is
that's
the
it.
people?
Yeah.
Where is the people that's helping you serve your community? You're doing an amazing thing. We all need to earn money. So you're doing your sacred livelihood, which from the outside looks amazing. You're doing this amazing job. You're doing your spirituality, you're around spiritual people, but yet there's still no real community in your real everyday life. Behind them closed curtains, you're really suffering. Like,
Yeah.
it's not fair. It shouldn't be that way. So, and also like in motherhood, there's less support from the generations. Like when I grew up, Auntie Karen were your next door neighbour, and there was so much more organic community. And like when my mum had me, now my brothers, my grandma was there a lot. I grew up with my grandma a lot. But
Yeah.
yet my son only sees his grandma maybe once a month on an average. She's got her own nursery. She's so busy, and so even Eileen Glasser, who wrote Motherhood, which was a 2021 bestseller, in there she speaks about that there's less intergenerational support and less communal support around mothers now than ever in history, especially in the West and with this individualistic culture. So it's so hard not just to be a human on your own, but then to be a mother on your own. And now you've got all these spiritual ideas, you're thinking more consciously, you're doing your healing. How do you
Yeah.
bring your daughter into that when she's just so closed off? If there was more community and she had aunties and the sisterhood to lean into, would they be encouraging the mending between you and her? Would the grandmothers be tending that and mediating that? So there is so much that goes on in this isolation individualistic culture that's wrong and against our development, against our health, against our well-being. So even in just that, it just raised so much. So thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
And we'll come to you, Lisa. Thanks so much for your patience. So Lisa is a mum of 4. Her children, just let me know if I've got this right, are 30, 23, 21, and 17. And she's been a single parent for 15 years with all of them. And before we started the recording, Lisa shared some really profound things about belonging, linking to her own early infancy, and how her mother didn't teach her how to belong. And so she grew up not knowing how to belong in the playgroup, in the playground at school, not knowing about how to belong in the clinic when she became a mother, and then in the baby groups when she was journeying through early motherhood. So she's had this journey of trying to belong in her life. And then this intergenerational healing came where she can then give the blueprint of that to her own kids better than what she learnt it. So there's so much there what you raised, Lisa, just in your introduction to us before we started the recording. So yeah, welcome to this podcast on belonging, and just introduce yourself to the listeners and share a bit about why you're here.
Hiya, I'm Lisa, and thank you. Gosh, even just listening, Bo, like I'm so emotional listening to everybody's stories so far. Just everything. It's like we don't do this enough, do we? We don't talk about how fucking hard life can be, how hard it is to be a mother, how hard it is to be a member of society. And I feel really emotional. So I'm not sure how cohesive you're going to get, but belonging is ultimately something I have studied forever, personally on my own self, because I never belonged, I never felt that. So yeah, it impacts everything. So, and I sort of sat there thinking about the word like belonging. And I think since I was a small child, I was interestingly longing to belong. So, and that's just been playing around as people have been talking, and that empty sort of longing that was missing. And it's like, how many people out there actually have that? It's like that hole inside that they're not quite right for this place. And we're not cut out to live in this society, are we? As women, as humans. It's not even just women. I think the patriarchy affects us all, male, female. Sorry, I'm off on a tangent here, but I just feel really moved by this whole conversation so far. So, and yeah, yeah, how being a single mother, I think, had its particular challenges for me on this belonging journey, you know, and turning up at schools and turning up at performances and having to go to headmistress meetings or going to meet people on my own as a single parent, and always feeling like there was something fundamentally wrong with me and that people were going to see that. And I really think that does come from this early lack of feeling like I belonged. And so that's sort of been a constant fight, wanting to show up for my kids, wanting to do it differently, wanting them to know that they felt loved and held, and all the time not feeling that myself. Yeah, it's been a challenge. It really has. And I'm proud of myself that I could rise to the challenge and my kids all feel loved. And God, you know, I'm sure they haven't got out of their childhood scot-free. How could they have, you know? But I know that I've stopped some sort of generational crap that had been passed through my family for I don't even know how long. Um, so yeah, sorry, I feel like I've gone off track a little bit there, but yeah, it's such a huge topic, and I think the patriarchal society doesn't want us to belong. If they cannot allow this kinship between people, they can't. Then they can control us because we're all limping. We're all limping because we've not got that person that can just see us or that person that knows. I think someone mentioned earlier Amira about being in that community where women watch out for each other, and like how to be seen like that is so important, and nobody wants us to be seen because when we're seen and when we're heard and when we're held, we become powerful, and that's not what society wants, or the people who run society, should I say. So yeah, so belonging is a biggie for me. So there's a lot of tangents I could go down with it, but for me, that's the fundamental part of belonging. Is if we don't get it when we're a child, and we can't get it if our mother didn't belong, you know, it's sort of that cycle. It stays, and it's yeah. I don't want people to feel like that in this. I want to be there for the women. I want to be there for people, let them know that, you know, you belong here. We all belong here. So that's my little introduction.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate it. And yeah, that note, like Amira, where you said about becoming a Muslim, there's actually a paper that I read in 2010. And it was religious fundamentalist mothers. So they've been raised by feminist mothers, you know, to have equal this and equal that and to push, but they rejected this individualistic paradigm of raising children on their own. So what they did was they left the culture of feminism and politics and went into religious communities, and they surrendered to a patriarchal model where the men were the leaders and the men had their own sphere because they got this tribe, the shared responsibility, the tending of the emotions, the tending to the sick and the needy, and making sure everyone's fed, you know, ringing people up, checking in, taking the kids, it all being shared. So they sacrificed the equality to find resource and community. So that was really interesting, what you raised about that, you know, and Amira, you know, what you've lived in the difference of that, you know. And then this other thing, what you mentioned about being a chain breaker, like in episode 2, I shared about my research. One of the themes was chain breaking. So the women who I interviewed saw these moments where this dark mother archetype emerges because she's been pushed to a limit. She's doing it all on her own. Then she's lost it. Like, it's not a part of the shadow. It's a symptom of cultural abandonment. So what the women were doing were using it as material for personal growth, so that it become not just chain breakers, but also like shifting a paradigm, not giving into pathology, you know, doing personal development work so that they could be better for the children, you know. And it seems amazing. Like, one of the women I interviewed, she joined a church just so she wasn't on her own. And in that church, the single mothers found the other single mothers and became their own little tribe within the church community. But she experienced two different churches. One of them looked down on the kids, like putting lids on pens and, you know, not being free and stuff. And the other, a Pentecostal church, where she did a lot of the singing and, you know, like around the Black community. So she had these different ideas and different models. But again, this like thing of seeking a space. So some women are going to religious institutions because they've got that into what do they call it, like an infrastructure of support that just happens because that's what they do. But some women don't want to sacrifice their values to go into there. So then, like me, I had to make my own, but I had to use language. Like I did a mum and toddler group, but only got secular women, so there weren't that space to bond. It was only when I framed it as a shamanic mum and toddler group that I attracted the right women, and also had a sharing circle, so we were talking raw about motherhood. Then we bonded, and that's where it came from, this depth. So there is you know, like we can belong with our biological families, but they might be fraught with conflict, or they might not support our views. Like if we want to do extended breastfeeding and our mums didn't breastfeed us, then we've got to fight for our beliefs and support. Like one woman I interviewed in the study didn't feel like she could trust a mum to honour not giving the kid cow's milk because they wanted to be vegan. So in medicine and injections, you know, when your values don't tally up with the family, the biological family, then you're isolated. So you haven't got that sense of community. So yeah, I mean, there's so much already in this pot. So I just want to come to you, Dawn, and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our listeners and say why you're here on this podcast. And now briefly introduce Dawn. So Dawn is a mother of two, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, who's just relocated because of an abusive relationship. She did have a community where she was, and she's lost it now in this new country, in this new place where she's relocated. So welcome, Dawn. Thank you so much for being on. I know this is a vulnerable time for you. So I appreciate your courage and yeah, you're brave sharing here.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, going through just a massive transition in so many ways in my life, in my relationship, as a mother, you know, in my own personal journey, you know, the lessons and the blessings, as they say, you know, coming thick and fast. And yeah, I'm really experiencing the stark contrast between what it's like to belong in a community, to be part of a network, to have a safe, supportive network of mothers around you, and not really. You know, in the past, I very much felt, you know, the need for a better motherhood, you know, for support for each other. I could see the lack, I could see the isolation. I was going through a lot of difficulties that I didn't have anyone to share with. And we all were going through collective difficulties. We were going through lockdown as well at the time. But something you said before, Bo, about ADHD, you know, as well, it resonated quite deeply with me. Like I'm getting wiggly now, by the way, because we've been here for an hour, we've been chatting before. But, you know, for me, I get so trapped in myself. Like I have so much to say and so much to give. And, you know, as mothers, you find yourself locked away with your own thoughts. And especially if you're that way inclined that you're spicy, then it's just unbelievable how far it can go. And it's beautiful, but then it's hard when there's nowhere to put it, you know. And I tend to put my energy, because I feel so sometimes confined to my own space. I call it trapped sometimes, you know, I felt captive sometimes. And the way I kind of transmute that is to go to those expansive places and come up with ways that things could be better, you know. And I've got that energy, and I've really enjoyed putting that into building networks before, putting activities on, you know, finding ways that mums can come together. Because for me, I knew what I wanted and I knew what I needed, but it doesn't exist, you know. And currently in my situation where I am now, I'm asking for support. Like I'm in quite a predicament, which we might talk about later. But I've been struggling through that transition because I've come from a place where I had friends, I had support, they knew me. You know, I'm quite quirky at times, I'm quite a lot sometimes I'm not, you know, I fluctuate. That's part of, you know, that's part of women. but that's part of that's hard, isn't it? When you are a certain way, you start to know where you belong. It means the world, because then you're free, because you're yourself and you feel safe. So yeah, to find yourself coming to a whole new situation and having to start again and start to really realize who you are, and you've got to explain all that stuff again, or what are my shadows that people are just like, oh, I've owned all those to those lot, but they don't know about them yet. They're going to come out sooner or later. And then kind of just there's so much you said, and there's so much I want to say, but as conscious kind of spiritual mums as well, like there's a whole other level to it, and it's hard to find that connection. And then when you get us together, we've got that connection, and don't get me wrong, it's beautiful because we are together and we have that space, because we're all kind of mum tag teaming it and making sure the kids are okay. But even then, it's still so much about the kids. There's never that opportunity where the kids are just, right, all women, your kids are safe, and let's all hold each other now. Your kids are safe, because from my current experiences, I'm raising the two boys alone, and I don't have any time away from them, and I hardly ever have. I've had 2 days away from them since they were born, and they're 4 now, 4 and a bit, or one is. I've not had any time away, and it's really difficult to be somebody or to learn who you are through sometimes the hardships and things like that, but to be changing as a woman but just still be only a mother. Does that make sense? You're there being a mum, and all of those other things you are has no space to be or to be released, and it's really difficult. I see the need for community. I'm going to put it back into a nutshell because I could go on forever, but I think, as part of that, it's really beautiful to be in a situation like this. I don't know if it is beautiful or not, but I just think it's time that we start talking about it. It's time that we really start talking about it, because I'm kind of watching it at kind of like the source and the real depth of the situation at the moment. And it's just making me go, everybody's traumatized, everybody's in pain. There's so many people being abused and nobody even realizes it. It's being normalized, all this kind of stuff. Women are lonely and they're not expressing themselves, and they need a safe space to come together regularly in different ways, not just circles, but to dance and to sing. And it should be a normal part of how we're integrated into society. And like you said about like the single mums, there isn't a word for it. I'm not sure if it's in the recording or not, but there isn't a word for it. In China, is it? And
Sure.
it doesn't exist because it shouldn't exist. How are people floating around like that? There should be, every community should be just like a swimming pool of assets and beautiful gifts and presence and safety and accountability, where we just jump in. We're always there, we don't leave it. And like through this process, I feel that so deeply. I think belonging is everything. When we're afraid and we're alone, of course we misbehave, of course we're dysfunctional, and it's not just the mums, is it? It's not just, it's society. And I think, again, when he said the village to raise the children, like the village needs to raise the mother, because when the women feel safe, that's when we're in our power, and that's where we want to nurture, and we then let our ripples of safety come out. So yeah, it's like there's so much magic in bringing us back to belonging, bringing us back to that connection.
Thanks, Dawn. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really beautiful to hear you share some of the mechanics behind, these ideas about belonging. So I'll just share a little bit about some literature. So in women's psychological developmental theory, there's this model by Ballou et al. That's called the ecological model of human development. And Ballou et al. Argue that interconnections, interdependencies, and interrelationships are fundamentally important in the development of people, especially women. But when you read it in an article like that, it's a bit vague. You don't really get the grounded understanding. So when we're just focusing on interconnection, like some of the things what you've just shared on, when we're interconnected with people, it's that being together, like what you said. Don't just need to come together and talk about the raw stuff to heal together, where we're more kind of like interrelating and interdepending on each other. We just need to be together and have fun and just live our everyday lives together where we're not isolated. So there's that need for interconnection so that we can, you know, not just share and move through our emotional process, but also we've got that feedback, you know, like we're existing with other mammals. So it's quite organic. It seems really primal, this idea of interconnection. So
It's like
when we think
and
about
mycelium, isn't it? Symbiosis and mycelium, we're just the same, you know, and that's when we're in our natural flow. That's how we can be, isn't it?
yeah, and I actually use mycelium as a metaphor for women's development, and then focused on the mother. So imagine a tree in the ecosystem. You know, it's using the mycelium network to exchange resources, and then that tree will then also give information to the mycelium about its offspring saplings that are around in that vicinity. So the mycelium help the trees to raise their offspring. So imagine this, the web of interconnection, interdependence, interrelationship is like this mycelium web coming out from you. So you're being fed. Now take that tree, that mother tree, out of that mycelial forest and put it on its own with its sapling. It's not going to be able to thrive. It's disconnected. It's going to start losing nutrients. It's going to start having to take those nutrients for itself, you know. And some trees, when you look, they pick the ones that are closest to them, you know, when they've got less resources, so they have to divvy it up. So then if you think about that mom on her own, outside of the network of other mothers, you know, she's like that tree trying to raise her offspring without the support of the mycelial network. So it's really interesting that you bring that metaphor in when I've used it in my research. And the other thing about this idea of you know, more spiritual, more conscious women, like when we've gone on this bit of a journey of personal development, we want to relate at depth. You know, we want to talk about how real it is. We've lost this superficial, like, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. It's like, how are you? Well, let me tell you. You know, when we've got that safe space, then we can trust we've got that interdependence. But when we haven't got that safe space, you know, we feel like we're going a bit mad. Is it just me? Am I the only one like this? If it's not safe to really share the raw of it, then how can we get help? Like, there was nights where I was having a really hard time, you know, and the only one who I could really ring was my mum. Because she was my mum, I knew she couldn't really judge me and she couldn't reject me, you know, but she gave me support that wasn't effective. So she'd say, you shouldn't think like that, or stop doing that. Like once Franco were crying and I didn't know what to do, and I started bashing my thighs. So I just bashed my thighs really hard, and she was on the line, and instead of being supportive, she said, that's really bad. So I just hung up on her because she couldn't hold me. And then I felt really bad for what I was doing instead of being resourced to move through it. So, like, what did I need in that moment then? I needed somebody that I could rely on, that had the right kind of words for me to depend on. So it's like, when we look at it psychologically, oh, independent interconnection and interrelationships are important. Oh, well, just go out and be at the mums group then. Well, it just doesn't work like that. Sorry. There's this depth that we need. There's a quality that we need. There's shared values that we need. So what came out in my research was that women didn't need a sisterhood anymore. They needed a motherhood, because they couldn't go to the women's groups where they could do all that because the kids couldn't go, because the kids are disruptive, and the other women had to censor their process. They couldn't scream because they had to protect the kids. So you're just locked, like you say, in this trap where you can't go and do any healing. And if you haven't got the right support, you know, if your family are judging you for breastfeeding, or like, you know, they're not being supportive in those moments of crisis, they're being judgmental, then it implodes. And that was my experience. So, you know, we need to understand not just normal development, we need to look at motherhood, right? How does interconnection, interrelationship, and independence change in motherhood? And the thing that I've got to is, right, how do we make a space where the right kind of women can come together, and how do we help them bond? Because there was no help. You don't go to these secular groups and there's no one introducing the mums. It's not an intentional space. It's not a safe space. It's not spelled out like that. It's like, let's come and be child-centric, let's look after the kids are having a lovely time, but all the mums are stood on the edge, really anxious, really knackered, like it took hours to get to that hour kid group, then they go home and they're frazzled and they have to get over it, but they haven't actually met anyone that's going to be there to make them a brew that night, or they haven't met anyone that they can phone up in the middle of the night and say, now you're my friend, and I'm feeling like I really want to throw my kid out of the window, like I'm having these horrible thoughts, someone to relate, oh yeah, I'm thinking like that too, because I'm awake and I'm going through it. Like, it's just normal when we're in this cultural abandonment. This is what's happening. Let's endure it together. There's just none of that, because there's no understanding. And then the complexities of it, like, it's hard work to make new friends. It's hard work. But when you're overtired or under-resourced, you haven't got the right amount of money because this government expects us to live on less than minimum wage. And if we do get a little bit off the father, if we're single mums, it's a pittance, and he should be celebrated because he's giving this, that, but still we can't afford basic things. Like, we have to compromise our views. Maybe we can't feed our kids organic food because we can't afford it, because we're expected to live on this pittance. And then we've got to make Facebook posts, and then we've got to put on these groups. Then we've got to do all the work of bringing people together and try and make some sort of living, try and retain some sort of sense of self. It's like, how the hell are we supposed to make those new friendships? Like, how the hell do we move through this evolutionary, like, mattress sense, this evolutionary epoch of going from woman to mother? Are we ever supposed to flourish in that when we've got all this need? We haven't got those quality interconnections, interdependencies, interrelationships. So yeah, I mean, let's have a little share now. Like, does any of these jump out to you where you could give some of the meat, some of the mechanics? Like, what does it mean to interrelate for you? When you had it quality and when you didn't have it quality, what was the differences? What does it mean to connect to you? And what do you need in society to make that? Well, let's save that till the end. What do we think needs to change? Let's save that till the end, and let's go for, like, interconnections, interdependencies. Like, what does it take for you to trust? Like you mentioned before, Amira, it's hard to ask for help. That's an acculturation because we're said that we should be able to do it. So it's like we're admitting that we're failing if we need help. But if we look at organic mothering and other cultures that are all supporting, it's just normal there. It's abnormal to not have help in those cultures. So, like, if we reframe it, like, what does it take for you to trust, to be dependent? What kind of community do you need to be, and when you were dependent and when you've not been dependent, what was the difference in your life? So, I mean, just put your hand up if you feel called to share first. Anything on interdependence, interrelationships, and interconnections.
Okay, yeah. It was interesting when you said about, like, mother and talk groups. I remember going to mother and talk groups like the ones you described, where honestly I got nothing from it, and it was like this wasteland. I just hated it. And then what saved my life was a friend of mine. She started a mum and tots group where we'd go around each other's houses, for example, and that was just the most enriching and, like, medicinal healing ever. And it was every Friday morning, and we did it till the kids probably all went to nursery or started school, and that kept me alive and kept me sane. And it was a completely different experience in the sense that we're still all coming together with our kids, and they're playing in one room, but we'd be in another room and we'd be in each other's houses. But there was something enriching and nourishing about doing it that way. Maybe because that was where our connectedness was. I don't know, maybe because we were of the same belief system and the same situation. I don't know, but it was a very different experience. And since then, that was some years ago now. So when our kids went to school, we moved on to a different phase. But something now that I have where I feel a similar benefit is, a lady I know started a little project in our area called Women on Bikes. Now, that gives me the same sustenance that I used to get from the mum and tots group. So it's interesting, but it just gives us all a bit of time each week. I know we all love it. We just go on a little ride together. We always go to a cafe, but again, it's feeding us. It's feeding our souls. Do you know what I mean? And I know we all benefit so much from that. So, like, sorry, I've forgotten the lady's name. I loved when she said she started a Ramblers group for mums, something like that. It's just, you know, like you said, it's finding where our unmet needs are and trying to create things like what you're doing. And a lot of the women in this group are trying to do. We're trying to fill those gaps. And you've done it with your, you know, your shamanic group, the mums rambling group, the sound therapy, like my cycling group. These are all things that we can tap into that, you know, help to keep us sane and connected, and their support systems. So they're two things that I can think that have really helped me, you know.
Thank you, Amira. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, if that's okay. So yeah, you just mentioned about, you know, I think sometimes it doesn't always exist, does it? But when you look, like when I think of the times where I've been connected as a mother, I mentioned earlier that becoming a mother, you realize how much doesn't exist and how much you need, and you don't realize that you need it until you're there and you're living it. And you know, so for me, yeah, the times that I connected, we did the Mamblers group, we did a women's walking group, so that was just really nice. We had like a page on Facebook, so we'd have like chats in the week, and then we'd choose where we met up and we'd go to different places and things. And I think the beauty of that was, and I need to be in nature and I need to be walking, you know, and I need connection as well. So it's just like, what do I need in this moment, and how do I make it work? And when you're with your babies in the pram and you're walking somewhere, you know, you're a bit more mindful, you're a bit calmer, and it's a space that you can connect with the mums. So, you know, I think, and another one I did like a singing group, we called it Sat Sing. So like coming together to have a sing really, and to plan to do things in the community. And again, that was, I just felt like I need to express myself. Like I don't sing, like I don't dance. And, you know, I lived on a narrow boat, so I might flail around the boat a little bit, but it wasn't quite enough. And situations were quite challenging at the time. And it was last January, and I was like, I'm going mad. I need to express myself. And I was like, I don't even sing, and I definitely don't sing in public kind of thing. But I made a flyer and I said, right, come on, I've booked a village hall and everybody's welcome, come down and have a sing. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And you know, when you go, oh, that was a moment of madness. What have I done? What have I done? Oh God, it's out there now. I was like, well, I'll just have to do it then. And I was like, well, I'll just print off some song sheets and we'll sing off the sheets if we have to, like, and we'll wing it. And it'll push me out of my comfort zone because I never sing in public and all this stuff. Anyway, it turned out really well, and we got like a beautiful team of people, and it was a weekly thing, and we did a wellness fair, and we had our names all on a t-shirt, and it was beautiful, you know. And that brought everybody together, like families and the mums and everybody. And what we did there is, it wasn't around the children as such. The kids were there, all kids were welcome. We bought a load of toys and instruments, but they could run around, but we'd encourage them to come and get involved and have a drum and a play or whatever. But then they could just go mad. I mean, they loved getting just inside the toy box in the end and just running around like it was a go-kart and stuff. And we didn't mind, you know, they were doing that, or they were flailing around with ribbons, and we were all pelting out like power songs. And, you know, it were good fun, you know.
That's
and
amazing.
It's like, God,
I just thinking,
like,
like, putting Frankel in a cardboard box with a ribbon running around after me at home on my own when I'm trying to tidy up or do the tea, I'd be getting really cross. But in this space where it's more tribal, isn't it? Like, I'm envisioning, like, you know, like the Himba tribe I spoke about in episode 1. Like, the kids are around each other and the grown-ups are around each other, and it's all just happening. You know, there's not one woman in charge of 1 or 2 kids in an isolated environment where she's got all of the chores and everything to do, and no one to speak to. You know, you talk about like the big of your personality, the stuff you want to say. You can't just say it to your kid. You can't have these profound thoughts and then share it with your kid, or you can't have these like emotional moments, like, you know, where you get a bit stressed and turn and share it with your kid. You just absorb it and absorb it. So like what I'm hearing is about like this expression, is some other people around to absorb. Tribal, the kids are all right, they've got each other to entertain themselves, and that does give space, doesn't it, for this deep sharing to happen when we're not so distracted. So it's beautiful. Beautiful.
It's also sharing a view with your children, because I try to be that for kids all the time, like I'm mad. I think it's that expression of yourself as well, you know, like your kids don't always see you when you're in joy. They don't see you when you're your truest expression and you're free and you're easy, because as much as you want to be that all the time, you can't bring it when it's not. You need it reflecting back at you. You need to, you know, you need to see the light in others so you find the light in yourself again, so you can give it back to them. You know, it's all just a big feed. And yeah, and they get to see you like that as well. They get to respect you when you're not grumpy mum and you're like, look at me, I'm mad, let's be mad. Like, they're the best times for me. You know, I obviously don't want to be like that all the time, but that's joy. I don't want my kids to see me any other way than that. And I find it hard, you know, when that doesn't exist. And I find it so beautiful to see it when it does, you know. Like, well, I'll talk about that later. Yeah.
Thanks, Dawn. Maria or Lisa, if you like, want to have a share on this, depending, connecting, relating.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've been again listening to everyone's stories, and yeah, and I've been really also looking at the word and belonging and what it means. I've just sort of really using this space to move into that. And like as you were talking and listening to other people, I was thinking, belonging, what actually does it mean? Like, what does it mean? And I think, you know, what I've been thinking is it means that who we are is completely acceptable. You know, we're welcomed, we are who we are is, you know, come, bring it out. And I think when that hasn't happened, you don't know who you are, do you? And you then, I know this is sort of completely self-absorbed. It feels a bit like that, the way I am in this, but it feels really, really fundamental. That if you don't feel like who you are is acceptable, how the hell can you move in the world anyway? How can you then grow? Because, I mean, I'm speaking personally. I think I grew up looking for clues in other people. Like, what does it mean to belong here? And then I'd be this way. Gosh, this is really deep. And if I'm with that group of friends, I can show that part of me, but not that. Gosh, this is really hard and really raw for me, actually. I didn't actually realize how much. How can you be completely acceptable to yourself if nobody's completely accepted you? And, you know, like I said earlier, luckily, as an adult, I've been through a lot of therapeutic processes. I was a psychotherapist. And so I had a really good therapist who could sit with me and accept me completely for who I was. I didn't have to hide. I didn't have to pretend. I just could be me. And that's where I first found what belonging was. And it was somebody who would let me be me completely, warts and all. This is the crap stuff I've done. This is when I've screamed at my kids. This is when I've wanted to run away, you know, and to sit there in front of somebody and have that, how important that is for belonging, I guess. And that sense of who we are is okay, regardless. So yeah, that's what's been brought up for me during this. And how fucking, sorry for the swear word, but how important it is that our children are made to feel like they belong. And if we are not being supported by a community, how can we give that, you know, fully? How can we? So yeah.
So much, Lisa. It just brings up so much. Like, first of all, because our culture is individualistic, we're going and sharing our burdens with a stranger and having to pay them for it, or
Absolutely.
waiting months and months and months on a waiting list. But when you've got that community of mothers around you and you're sharing about the morale of motherhood, it's like you're co-counselling each other. But it's with people you know that know your story, you know, so that when you're in the actual everyday real world while you're sharing, not in the therapist office, then you go back out into the world and have to put your armor back on and integrate your healing, is it? It's like, unless you've got that group around you, how can you be integrated in your belonging? And then the other thing, what you've said, is about the children. You know, if they've not got community growing up around them, then they're growing up in an individualistic, like, microcosm of the macrocosm of the individualistic culture, where the model is, like, often with me and Frank, it's me and him on our own. You know, no one there for him to relate to, no one feeding back. Like, sometimes I might get mad because I'm premenstrual or he's pissed me off or whatever, and if somebody else were there, they might go, oh, mummy's just having a bad day, so it's not him that's at fault. Mummy's just having a bad day, but he hasn't got that, so he's taking on, I'm bad. So see it like what you're saying, it's not just a grown-up It's also the child that
Yeah.
needs this interrelationship, interdependence, and interconnection. And even in some of the other cultures we've spoke about, like in Hunt, Gather, Parent, which is a book written by Duclef, again 2021, she studied the Himba people, and she come up with this term allo parenting. So we've got solo parenting, nuclear parenting, allo parenting, which means other, where you couldn't actually tell whose parents were whose kids, or whose kids was whose, because they
Yeah.
were going to all these different caregivers. So mum's not available, she's stressed, she's having a shower in the river, whatever. I'm going to go and see grandma, I'm going to go and see auntie, or want to play, or there's all the other kids to go and play with, like what you were saying, Dawn, like all these impulses to go and express and be just are so stunted when we're isolated and when the
Yeah.
kids are isolated. So I appreciate that. And where you spoke earlier, I mean, I wish I'd recorded it at the beginning when you went into that, like, be longing. I am longing to belong. And
Yeah.
this well of sadness around it, like, I have that too, this deep
Yeah.
longing to belong. And when I feel it, I flourish. And when I don't feel it, like, I feel like I hate myself, like in self-loathing, really depressive states. And like, I'm wrong, there's something wrong with me. I haven't done enough work. I'm not a good person. I'm not emotionally stable enough. I'm way too. But actually, when I'm in community and I feel like I belong, there's no woundings there. I'm not bad. I'm good. I'm beautiful. Get celebrated. It's like that good mirror.
Absolutely.
So, it's not too much, and there's not tangents, and like this depth of sadness. I think so many of us feel that, really. And I think that's a nice segue to you, Maria.
Yeah, definitely. And it is, and I think society and social media and TV, everything tells us that this is the way we should be. This is what a good mother looks like. This is what a good woman looks like. Everything's tidy, everything's in its place. The shopping's in the fridge, the food's great. Everything's nurturing and loving. Like, I don't know many people like that. I'm sorry. I've been looking. I've been looking for them, and it's like, where is the myth that's perpetuated? Creates these robots that think that that's a lie. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, tangent again. But yeah, like we are. It's fucking hard work living in this world. Hard work being a mother.
Thanks, Lisa. Maria, go for it.
Hi. Yeah, so what's brought up for me is I didn't really have any resources as a young mother. I didn't go to baby groups, mother and toddler groups, because I was depressed, and I was in too much shame about the abusive relationship I was in. I had one friend who used to come round with her kids, but she used to just judge me because I didn't have this perfect routine that she thought I should have. And as I said, I didn't have a mother who supported me. Now, my daughter seems to have more resources. There seems to be a lot more around. I know you have to pay for it, but she goes to a lot of groups and stuff, which I didn't have. I can remember, the hospital where I was in when she was born. Everyone was having a reunion, all the mothers, and I couldn't get to it because I had a big Silver Cross pram that I couldn't get on a bus, and it was too far to walk. So I didn't even get to do that. And I went to a red tent with my daughter, probably, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. And when everyone was talking, it was only then I realised you had a fucking terrible time as a young mother. You didn't have any of this support. You didn't have anything. You didn't have a good mother, and you didn't have a role model because your childhood was so bad as well. And it was only then I realised how traumatised I'd been. And there was one point when my daughter was a teenager. I was, where the dole send you as a lone parent to try and get you to take jobs and stuff, or courses. And they were telling me about all these different courses, computers and stuff. And I was like, no, no, no. And then she said to me, oh, there's this one, it's called Wild Woman. And you do you know, different creative stuff. And I went, oh yeah, I'm a bit of a wild woman. Go on then. And I wasn't really on my spiritual journey then, but I wrote poetry, and she'd said about poetry. So I said, oh yeah. And when I went, it was in a little council office, and it was like a circle, and everyone was talking, and she was sharing poetry and about her travels, and we were all just listening. And then I just broke down one day and said, I've had a breakdown. I drink every day, you know, and you know, and I broke down completely. And then it gave all the women around me, it gave them permission, and people started getting up saying, yeah, I've had a breakdown and I've had this. And that was when I started to feel held by other women, and I realized I had a lot to heal. And I mean, that lasted a few years, and then that kind of group broke up, but it was a really, yeah, healing, powerful time for me when I knew, you know, I needed to feel this was home, it was safety, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about it, isn't there? When you have an intentional space like this, like it's a safe, brave space now. No one's judging you. We're all going to share our raw,
Mm,
full but true stories, and just making it okay. Like in our culture, you know, we've so suppressed our emotions, haven't we? Of these posters, like with the almost like the Union Jack on and the crown, keep calm and carry on. You know, and like we pathologize emotions as well. And actually, emotions are a massive part of just being human. They're normal. They're organic.
yeah,
And in all this suppression and this shaming of big emotions, all it's done is made us sick, actually. It's made us sick.
mm,
So the emotion isn't a pathology, but the lack of tending and the lack of expressing, then it becomes a sickness, you know, and our culture is, it's in massive need of big release, isn't it? And so I love that. There's something about this interdependence, this word interdependence. Like, how do you build that trust? You know, in that circle, it took for you to just be brave and share. Then everyone went, oh, it's safe here. I can depend now. Like you
yeah,
use that word home. It felt like home. But
yeah,
what was different was authenticity, depth, real relating. And so is that it? Is that all we need to feel safe enough? You know, or is there something else? Is there something else that we need to feel safe enough? And when we are given that space and we can have a little purge and, you know, someone
mm,
rubs our shoulder, I feel a bit better. So it's healing then, isn't it, as well, to depend on that. And one of my participants in my study, Sunshine Girl, she had this moment in her interview where she started saying, oh yeah, spiritual communities where you go and you do these workshops and you might do cacao ceremonies or go to sound baths. But then she went, hang on, is that really community? Because they're not helping me when I'm sad with my kid. They're not coming round when I'm sick. I can't ring them up to take my kid to school. So is it real community? Or is it just a bunch of people healing together? So there's a disconnect. So I found that just like wider spiritual community where we go and do things. But then, like for me, like I have loads of them, but I couldn't ever ring him in the middle of the night and say, I feel like I want to chuck my kid out of the window. I'm having these horrible thoughts. Please, can you help me? I didn't feel like I could depend on them. I can depend on the space when I'm in it and trust the circle etiquette, but they're still strangers. They're not coming home. They're not there when I'm going mental in my own little world. So, you know,
yeah,
what does it take to move over that bridge? And in motherhood, you know, like what do we need to create that space, you know, where we can't just, where we're not just in these spiritual communal bubbles where, you know, a lot of kids can go to festivals and stuff like that, can't they? You know, what do we need to create in the everyday life? How do we bring it into culture, really? Like how does that happen?
mm,
Like first, do we have to explore how hard it is, like the edges we go to show that something needs doing, so that some sort of powers that be, or you know, this other theme I found in my research was build it for ourselves. And like a lot of us, that's what we've had to do. We've had to just
yeah.
make it for ourselves. So, I mean, what's coming up for people now as I've just shared that? Does anybody want to have a little go?
Well, I was just thinking when I was like really like, you know, like you said, that is so spot on about there's these things you can go to, but when you really need it, you're dealing with it on your own. And something that I um always felt I wanted, especially with a young baby, was I wanted to go and live with a family, or cooperatively live with a group of women. And the same, like, as you get older as well, I think there's a real need to do that. Like, we have one of my teachers, she's done like incredible things in our community, and she started an Islamic nursery, and she's done many things. And I was saying to her recently, we need a place for women who are experiencing domestic violence, or they're on their own, and like where we can live cooperatively. And I think she is actually now thinking along those lines of getting a building for that in the future, and she's the type of person who will make that happen, hopefully, with our help. But that to me would fill a big gap for these times, because it's nice going to these groups like we've all identified, but it's like, where can you really go when you're really broken? And I think as women, as mothers, you're frightened as well when things get really bad to go to your GP. Not that you can even get to see one now, but just like disclosing when you're really vulnerable, because you're always worried about social services, because there's no resources. And if you tell somebody you're really struggling, you might end up with child protection on your door or something like that, and that isn't what we need. So it's like you said, what can we build? And for me, I think like some kind of cooperative space where you can, even if you just moved in, you wanted to for 6 months, like the lady who's in a refuge now, like a really nurturing, safe, communal type of living. Because I've known women who've gone into refuges, and they're not very nice experiences, for one reason and another. But that, to me, I think that if we had something like that, that would fill quite a big gap for women in different life stages as well. So that's just what came up for me.
Thank you, Amira.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Just what come up for me was that we need the family unit again. That's what's missing. Like, everyone's living separately, and even though our grandmothers and that, where you said they used to live, like my grandmother lived right round the corner from me, but now most of us are so far apart. Some are even in different countries, and I think they're sort of forgotten if they get sick as well. The way we don't respect our elderly anymore, we just stick them in a nursing home. I mean, I'm going through the perimenopause now, so I'm finding if you don't start healing this stuff now, it comes back to you in the menopause. And I also feel like we really need to be held by our men. And I mean, I know our men are going through their own crisis, but a lot of them do need to step up and start holding us. I mean, I asked my brother for help the other day, and he said no. And this is a common thing with him. He doesn't do enough for me, and I'm his sister, and I feel guilty for saying that. But then I see other cultures, and they're sending money home for the sisters, or they're doing everything for them, and I think that should be the same way here. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel you there. I once rung my brother and told him I was feeling suicidal, and then he said he'd got a new computer game and he needed to go and play his new computer game. So yeah, complete lack of responsibility. That idea of conscientiousness, checking in. Amira, like you were saying, you do this cook thing in your community, like, just being responsible, this sense of responsibility, not because you're obligated, but because it's family and because it's humanity, and that's what we do. I think this individualistic culture has give permission for people to stop caring. And does that feed into this not being able to ask for help? I wonder, who feels to share anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to share on that, because I think that's so bloody true. And I think it's a perpetual thing of sort of cultures in families, because like my family are the same. Like when I was struggling with my firstborn, my mum threatened to ring social services. Great, thanks for that. And when I got ill, and my kids were a bit older, nobody in my family offered to help me. Like, I couldn't walk. I was a single parent with 4 kids, couldn't walk, couldn't take myself to the toilet. And nobody would come and help me. I mean, I didn't know how to ask for help, because that was not in my upbringing to ask for help. But even though people knew this was going on, nobody came. And I think that was the worst thing, you know, never mind the fact that I couldn't bloody take myself to the toilet. And I had people coming in to do that for me in the community. I had carers coming in. But my own family just ignored it as if it wasn't happening. And it's like, what is, like, I think the question used to be, I think for me growing up was, what is wrong with me? But I think by the time I'd got to that stage when I was poorly and I had to do a lot of inner work, I knew it wasn't me. And it was, what is wrong with them? What, not even them, what is wrong with society? That when somebody is struggling and somebody is alone, and you can see it with homelessness, you can see it with all the people in society who are struggling, people don't want to know, because somehow that taints things, because I might have to look at how my shit isn't together too. Like, that's how I make sense of that. It's like, how can we watch what's going on in Palestine? And I don't want to make this about that, but I'm a mother, and there are mothers out there losing the children, and people are just sat by and eating the tea, watching the news as if it's nothing. It's like, what is wrong? What is wrong with the world that our compassion has been so fucking muted? Because we're all pretending to be perfect or whatever it is on this rat race of life. The atrocities are going on around the world. Atrocities are going on in people's homes in this country. It's not just around the world. You know, one person on this call who's fled from a domestic abuse situation. How's that going on now? How are our mothers, how are our people not welcoming and saying, come here, let me help you. Let me help you through this. You don't have to be sent away. Why are the mothers sent away? Why, you know, it's all wrong. And that's why we need this. That's why we need community. And I don't know how to do it, because for me, it feels, the groups are so important. And sharing like this is, I think, the most important thing. And then sharing it with the wider world, that people think, oh, this is okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be alone. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to not know what the fuck you're doing. You know, who does? But we don't, I don't know, I can speak personally that I feel like there's such an expectation that we absolutely must know and have our shit together. Otherwise, there's something wrong. And if there's something wrong, don't talk about it, because we'll shame you for not having it together. So it's something for me really fundamental that has to change within, from how we bring our children into the world, you know, how we're loved, how all of those things allow us to stay in our humanity. Yeah, I feel like I've just come to it. My puppy's barking downstairs, so I'm wondering if you can hear that. So it's took me away from the conversation.
We're all just speechless then, like, just so true what you're saying, and I've got tears in my eyes, because it's like, you know, I talk about these needs into relationship, what we need, but really what we need is other people to step forward and care, take responsibility for us. I remember like feeling like that, like when I was on my own in that flat, going absolutely insane. You know, like, who's responsible for me? That's what sometimes I cry, like almost like the sky is spirit, whatever, and go, who's fucking responsible for me now? I need someone to be responsible for me, because I can't do this. Do this. Like, does someone come? And what you said to me about communal living, I tried to start a mummune, but because we've all got these like walls and social fucking etiquette, it didn't happen. We could have been living together, and it is just so profound, you know, the depth of where you've just took us, Lisa. Like, you're right, there's so much suffering in the world, and you know, there is this pretense, you know, and even the like spirituality, you know, the only privileged people really that can really access it. So then you've got these micro communities that are all over Facebook saying, oh, look how amazing it is, we're doing all this ceremony all over the world. Like, you know, there's single mums at home raising the next generation, going absolutely insane. Like, should we not be helping them? Like, rather than all the rich people going spending all your money on big rich retreats. Let's start doing some of the groundwork. Let's start filtering some philanthropic money down to help these women. Because I think if we can help women raise kids and bring this organic need around to enable mothering, then we wouldn't have a generation of fuck-ups. And we could raise amazing, like, conscious kids that are, you know, just get rid of war, get rid of all the not sharing resources. And like Palestine is a country that belongs to Earth, and everybody belongs on Earth. You know, like you say, why are we not? You know, it's just, yeah. I mean, you've obviously can see it in my response. Like, you just stirred so much there. It was such a rich sharing. Thank you, Dawn. Is there anything you want to say?
There's so much to say, but like, there's so much. I'm trying to just bring it back to a point and to see if there's something I can bring. But so I think, so being in refuge right now, what I'm realizing is it's a place where I'm just being kept safe, you know. And when I got here, I was like, oh, you know, the relief, and you're like, right, okay, things are going to get better, and this, that, and the other. And at the first one I was at before we moved on, I went in and I was really, I think I was premenstrual as well, and I'm getting shaky thinking about it. And I was going, I'm not doing very well. I need some help. I was going, I don't know what reality is. I'm feeling really disturbed, really distressed, and I need some help. And they went, well, do you know what you need to do, girl? Get to the doctors and get some tablets. And I'm like, I am feeling so fucking much right now. I've just stepped out of something. I'm overflowing. I haven't got any space. I've got 2 children. I'm in a new space. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm being bombarded. I'm being attacked. And that was their response, you know. And then I got here, and it's, you know, I feel like I'm only just really stepping out of that fog, like recently. But I've been saying over and over again, I'm struggling to discern reality. I've got conflicting views on this situation. I've been in a manipulated situation. I'm not actually sure what reality is. And I'm being very honest about this. I'm being very open. I've told them I've got fluctuations in my mood. And I think I knew it was hormonal, and I pointed it out to them. I ended up getting a warning because I went out one night, and I ended up camping out, and I didn't tell them. I feel like I'm not even telling you that somehow now. I'm so bloody, I feel like I'm being indoctrinated, you know. I used to live on a narrow boat. This is not me. And then, so I did that. And then I didn't have, I had somebody told on me for having a can of gin in the building, and it's alcohol free. And then they're bringing up all these things, and I'm getting written warnings for them. And I'm on the brink of being evicted. And then they said, they were talking about a referral to social services and a referral to the substance misuse service. And I said, my substance use isn't the problem. I was like, and I know exactly what I need for my children. And I keep telling you what I need. And I keep going in and saying, do you know what I need? Do you know what we need? Do you know what we need? What about these books? There's no books on it. There's no support group. None of the women here know what trauma is. Nobody knows what PTSD is. They don't really understand what's happening to them. And all you're doing is giving them rules, you know. And then they're always seeing me like tippy tapping away, because I'm working on an idea at the moment that's really important to me, and it's a solution focused thing. And one of them said, do you not think you'd do better to, you know, just leave that for later, leave that to when you've left refuge and you're on your feet again. And I said, and I went, like, hands on my head. I was like, but like in a loving way. But I went, the thing is, do you think I want to be sat here now going, how do I get out of here? How do we get out of here? Because this isn't about me getting out of there. There is, you know, I need to get out of it to where? There is nowhere to go. Everyone's messed up. And I'm like, God, I can see it because I'm here, but so many people can't see it, and I didn't see it. And that's the thing. And like what Lisa said, when you see the truth, people don't want to see the truth. If you see the truth of someone else's struggle and you really go there and feel it with them in compassion, then you're in, because it resonates with you in your own truth, and nobody wants to go there. So nobody is, you know. And it's like, I'm not sure where that's going really, but I'm flabbergasted by how little there is, you know, out there. And just, I'm not sure where I'm going now. I got all enthusiastic, but yeah, I think that it comes back to
this situation, Dawn. You know, where
yeah.
you've got such incompetency around you. I think, you know, what you need is, like you say, nurture. You need tending. You need some support to come in and help with the kids, somewhere where you can just share and have a cry and titrate, you know, some big feeling, someone to say you're not going mad, you're just seriously overwhelmed, you know, and you need a bit of support with therapy, just gentle to start to tell your story. You're in the background, a safe space, and you need to be resourced in your motherhood. You don't need to be told you need to go and get some drugs. Don't do your project, which is probably the only thing that's grounding you now, probably the only thing that's keeping you alive. You know, you need someone to help with that, don't you? Right? How can we help you focus on that project? How can we help you focus on your project so that you can then go and be independent? Get out of this weird pseudo therapeutic environment that isn't really safe, where you've got all these rules, where you're not even free to choose whether you have a gin or tonic. You know what I mean? It's just, it feels like a crazy box. And when you put loads of people that are in heightened states in these environments together, you know, they're just gonna keep spiraling. Like, why would you not use drugs in that place? Because you need to escape your reality, because it's so hard. Like, I've worked in mental health environments where everyone's suicidal, and all they want to do, the staff, is just keep them up with the depot injections. There was no money to take them out, no money to actually start any healing. Like, they were scared. Like, don't take the lid off, just keep them suppressed, keep them going. And it's like survival. It's not recovery, it's not healing, it's just survival. So something's seriously wrong in the system. It's inhumane. You're not being treated as an individual. It's not a case by case. And the staff that are in there are so poorly trained and so poorly equipped to actually deal with you and help you properly. You know, it is an absolute mess, you know. So, I mean, we're hitting 2 hours now of being together, but it feels so juicy. And I don't want to keep you, you know, all day. So let's just wrap it up with this idea of what does need. So what did you need in your life to be different to help you? You know, what was it that didn't exist, what you needed? And now, you know, if you're still in it now, what do you need now, or what do you want to see? You know, like, and let's think outside the box, you know, let's think um even like unachievable, unrealistic, you know, let's just share, you know, to get some sort of like sense of what could go on, what could go on.
I just think about, it's really sad to say this, but to feel loved and just accepted where you are, you know, at that time. It's like a lot of the ladies in the group have said, it's like I've asked for help from little bit of family that I have, and I've, in my, you know, darkest hours, and I've like been rejected for that, you know. And it's obviously not just me, because a few of the women here have also shared similar things. There's something seriously wrong. So I think what it comes down to, it, you've got to feel like loved, and like a few of the ladies have also said, um accepted, you know, embraced for who you are, and something that we're denied. So I'd just say something as simple as love, you know, to feel love from another human being. And it actually doesn't matter who it is. It could be somebody at the bus stop. Do you know what I mean? We all need it, don't we? But how often do we actually feel it? You know, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I'd say the same kind of thing, really. Loved, held, supported. Maybe maybe that's just my stuff, but mothered is a big one for me too. Probably because I wasn't really mothered. Um, and sorry, I've just gone blank then. Yeah, what you were saying about the groups we go to, cacao circles and that, yeah, a lot of it is, I mean, people have got to make a living, but afterwards, we're not being supported afterwards. So we need places where maybe, you know, we don't have to pay for these things, and there are things available all the time, or as much as possible. There's a big thing in Liverpool, you know, you're in with a tribe and all this, but I've never felt no tribe in Liverpool. You know, you've probably seen them at Conscious Camp and that. They totally rejected me when I needed help. So it makes me angry when I even think about that, to be honest. I think it's all bullshit, all that tribe stuff.
I think you're touching on something really important here, Maria. So I'm going to invite you, if you feel brave, to share the awful but true of that, because it is, there are a lot of these spiritual tribes where you could go, and I was in one when I first moved to Selby Bridge, and it was very healing because I actually had somewhere to go with my kid. But then when I started to be neurotic and emotional there, one of them judged me and actually lied and said I'm emotional every time I go in, which completely shut me down. And they weren't aligned with their values of, yeah, come and be your real self, and we're a real. So it's like this pseudo tribe, actually. And I think because we're so desperate for something, we lean in, but then we feel exposed and naked because that true interdependence, what we were talking about, it's not there. We can't really depend on the people. They're not really our community. It's just like my participant Sunshine Girl said, a lot of people doing some stuff together, and then I mean, speak to that, Maria. Speak to that anger, and
So I used to go to a lot of groups, and I thought they were my friends, but they were used. I think I just trained in my sound therapy then. They were saying, "Oh, come along and share." And they did pay me a little bit, like a donation or something, but they were using me. And when I needed help, they totally rejected me. And I think it was all about numbers and getting money, come to my groups. But when you really need something, don't bother me. And when I spoke out about it and said, I need more than this, and I don't want to be used just for my sound or what I can do for you. The I can't think of the word, but I was kind of isolated from the groups then. Yeah.
sorry, shame on them.
Hmm.
Shame on them.
Yeah. And these are other women as well who've got children and that, but it's all about them and their own little cliques and that. And it was very hateful for me. I've got past it now, but it was a very hateful time. And I just kind of went into my own healing in my house saloon and just did it. I went to India as well, but I did my own healing alone, which is not good because it should be in community, shouldn't it?
Yeah, no, how do you trust again and trust again and trust again to keep trying when the community's been like that? Like it's not safe, is it? So it kind of reinforces like the patriarchy. Then it's got these mechanisms within it which keep reinforcing it and keeping it strong because, how are you supposed to become in community when your community's hurt you? So, it's going to take a lot for you to trust again and try again. So something about this, what we're saying so far, I know there's a couple still left to share, but this idea of the strong matriarchal voice actually pulling on people's integrity and virtue and saying, look, there isn't anything wrong with them. How do we sort out the tribe? Because they forgot that they belong, because we've allowed them to forget that they belong, because we haven't showed them that they belong. So really it's not the individual, is it? What I'm getting to is like it has to be an all for one, and everyone taking some level of responsibility to tend. And that's what you both shared, like this matriarchal aspect. And there's a model of mothering called Black Mothering, which Andrea O'Reilly spells out in her new book Matricentric Feminism. And one of the women in my study experienced this when she was in the Black Pentecostal church and the Black community. She was held, and so there's this idea that there's always someone tending, and it's a matriarchal figure. She might not be a mother herself, or she might be a grandma, but she's like a key figure in these small pods of community that'll not boss everyone around, but remind everyone of integrity. Hold it all, like this, hold it and keep tending. So is it that we've lost a matriarch, that we've lost a good mother that's not here, that's not empowered, that's not given a voice to say, hey, stop it, check yourself, go and look after that person, go and do that job, go around and see Doreen, she's ill, she needs a bowl of chicken soup, get off your computer, like the kids, getting the kids involved in it, like, and is this now the beginning of this ripping to build her? Is this where we have to get to really be raw and show how much we're suffering, so people look at themselves and go, fuck, if I was them and they was me, what would I need? And if I'm me and they're them, what can I do? Who wants to share?
So yeah, it's just what you said about defining integrity as well, because I think when you say like people are so lost, and in the spiritual community there's almost this like, we have a way and that is the way, but the way is not defining a way, the way is being, and being allowed to be ourselves. And I think that's so forgotten, that I always have this like idea that if we introduced ourselves from the beginning again, that, you know, if we're like all the people who intend to be there, like their raw, authentic selves, those who are heart-centered and just want to be genuine and talk real solution, you know, and put us all in a nice space together, and almost like write a CV, like a Lonely Hearts ad, but, you know, for who you are and what you want from your life kind of thing. And that's your profile, if you will. You know, you say who you are and you keep it real. You could say, like, on a bad day, you might see me doing this, or, you know, just real opportunity to like label yourself and own yourself, and, you know, start saying, wow, that was so refreshing, and it'll be so good for other people to see themselves being vulnerable in that way, and starting to look at the similarities, because whilst we can all be one, we can all branch out into those bits where we do spark, you know, different sparks. And that's again that symbiosis and that mycelium where we all resonate with who we need to resonate with. And I think that's the truth, you know, and that's where we need to get to. And I think somehow it's giving ourselves permission to do that, to be ourselves, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, and to speak about what we need. And how do we do that? Because nobody wants us going, wait, this is how they'll hear it, you know, we're needy and it's not fair, and we want to point out all the bad things in the world, you know. And it's like, no, we want to be voices, because I think a large collective of this collective are experiencing this. So instead of numbing it down and trying to pretend it doesn't happen, how about we all just start talking about it and say, and you know what, I need to get out of this. You know what I could really do with? You know, we could just have women's walk up the hill and we all have a scream and go home again. It's like, I know we haven't got time. We'll all just meet up, go up that hill, have a quick scream, off we pop. Right, anybody up for doing something tomorrow? You know, there's no reason why that can't exist, you know. And I think, like, as the powerful creators that we are, we just start sitting together, like you know, you're bringing us together now, Bo, and just having real conversations about, like, what do we need, where are the gaps, how do we get to the source, what shall we create, you know, and then do it. And yeah, it sounds easy, and you know, I'm being flippant, but it is very possible and it is very needed, and that is where we're at right now, you know, just to return to our
Thank
true
you.
selves and to feel safe.
Thank you. I think as well, with your situation now where you're in, I think, you know, there's a whole host of people out there in the care industry and social service industry where they're not trained, because it's not trauma informed, it's a pathological, and all these issues are socio-cultural, but actually they're not. They're emotional issues, it's personal. It's so I think we need a whole caliber shift in the care industry where people are retrained, actually, you know. And again, loads of money for resources. Like, you know, I dream about setting up a charity of the fairy godmothers called the Fairy Godmothers, and it's a line that women can ring in the night when they're overwhelmed and breastfeeding or sleep deprived, and, you know, trying to keep doing bottles. Like, that whole issue around sleep in the first couple of years is fundamental, so, you know, disappointingly misunderstood. Like, you know, and all the stuff around self-harm, it's all focused on adolescence, you know. So there was nothing I could look at that said, yes, mothers with severe sleep deprivation who have been isolated are going to get to these crazy points. This is a line that you ring that can be sensitive. Anyway, so when they ring the Fairy Godmothers helpline, this is my dream. It's just, you know, older women that start singing down the line. They say, it's okay, we've got you, we know you're having a really hard time, you just have a little cry, we're just going to sing now, you hold your baby, we're going to help you get through this. Not like, let's come and take your baby away and lock you away and give you loads of medication until you. It's like, actually, I don't need you to take my baby away. I need you to give me resources so I can endure. I need you to support me so that I can do this and have more space to do it right. You know, like, how can we get into them spaces where you are, where they can go, there's nothing to do with what we should drink. Gosh, she needs a fucking drink. Look what she's going through. Give her another gin and tonic and go and sit with her kids so she can go and have a bath while she drinks it. That's what we need in that space, isn't it? Not you being told you're going to get a victim if you drink again. That's more stress onto you already. We're already feeling so vulnerable. Like, so they need to be retrained to understand that, you know. And again, like, how do we make culture more responsible? How do we make brothers more responsible for their sisters? You know, what is it? And I feel like this matriarch again, this like But that's us, isn't it? This is unified, real women's voices going, right, it's not us, it's you. Sort yourself out. Come on. Giving you an opportunity to grow. Yeah, like, I don't know. Anyway, Lisa, we'll come to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think your question was, what was it? How do we get this, or how do we get there? And I think doing things like this, number one, where we are just real, where we own our vulnerabilities, where we talk about the real stories, we don't pretend. And I think the more that people do that, because really, everybody's fucked up. It's not just us. We just can talk about it. A lot of people can put things on top of it. Well, I've got my shit together. I've got a good house. I've got a good job. I've got a good husband, and everything else is kept in there. When in reality, we're all longing to belong, And I think the more that women speak like this, the more that we are truthful and open and we get it out there into the world. I mean, we've got the internet now. We can spread this, This is the movement. This is how I see it of our generation, is that we can do something here. And it's deeper, because I think it's about how we bring the children into the world, as you know. But it's got to start somewhere. We can't change the education system right now, because we've got fucking politicians who don't give a shit about that. It doesn't serve their agenda to bring up well-rounded, good thinking, smart, kind people. It doesn't suit that agenda. So I feel like we've got to set the tremors going now with this. And I think there are a lot of women out there doing it. And I think, yeah, there's so many groups. Like I've been in spiritual groups, and unfortunately, it's full of people who are spiritually bypassing, that they think that by being quiet and flowing nicely and gentle is the way to be free, when actually underneath all of that there's a huge turmoil that they can't bear. And that's why they send people out of the groups, why they don't want them in there, because they don't want to face their own shit. So why do they want that in there? They just want people playing nicely and singing nicely and chanting nicely and doing yoga nicely, which are all good things. I'm not like poo-pooing that, but I think that's what sadly has happened in spiritual communities as well. So that's, not all, but a lot of them have they miss this fundamental thing that we need to be real, to be here, and to be, just to be here. We need to be real. So keep doing what you're doing, Bar, basically. And the more we all do that, we take on that responsibility that there's only us who can change this. The people in power don't want to change it, but we need to. What's going to happen? Like, where is this going to lead if we don't? So that's what I think.
So rich, so rich. So yeah, I mean, just to summarize, it feels like what we need is the voice of the good matriarch, the good mother, not to come and take over and be a matriarchy, but to actually hold up the mirror to society and the collective and go, all right, this is how far we are along the journey. And we're all trying now. We're getting into these ideas about healing, and we're reframing ourselves as human. But in that process, we're neglecting all of the pain. So let's, just check ourselves here, where we're at and what's going on. And if we're really trying to be more in an integrity and to be more collective, then it's not selfish. Like, I want my tribe to come to my festival and all have a lovely time, like, and be a certain way. Like, actually, no, how do I honor the people that come and share, and how do I honor them as human? How do I go deeper than the surface spiritual gathering into the real everyday life? So it feels like there's something about a sense of responsibility, and then also from our side, the ones that are vulnerable and suffering, and they're in this dark space, feeling like floating around in the void and not really a part of it. Like, how do we take responsibility for our voice and go, hey, nothing wrong with me, but I'm suffering, as you would be if you were in my situation. So come on, because next time I'll be the one that's all right and you'll be the one that's not. And come on, treat others as we want to be treated. And I think a lot of it has to be put on the people that have the big money, the people that have these positions of political power, like, they need to be looking as well, don't they? Stop cutting money away from the lower socioeconomic levels of society and realise how much of a value if the care in the home is going on and mothers doing the work for free, taking on so much of this toll. Like, if you could help us more, by the time our kids are adults, our society just function a lot better. So you need to invest, not because we're needing, because we're fucked up and having a hard time, but because we're raising the next fucking generation.
Exactly.
If you don't give us enough resources, there's enough respect, then next generation is going to be fucked like we are. So come on, that's it. Help the mothers. And we flip it all on its head in one fucking generation, and we all need to take responsibility. And that is the matriarch, right? I feel like that's it. Like this goddess reawakening, the balancing of the collective. It's not, oh, let's all wear floaty dresses now and pretend we're goddesses and read our goddess cards. It's like, no, this is the truth. Let's speak it. Let's get on with sorting it out. You know, absolutely. That's so. I think that's what we've got to. Yeah, it's all about the mums.
I think, Bro, as well, it's, you know, we need to create this, we need to create a situation where we're able to give each other permission to say what we need, you know, practice it and don't feel bad about it. I think we need to create these habits where it's good, because when we recognize what we need, you know, we can build on that. So it's creating these cultures where it's okay. And it's okay to be broken, because like you just said, we all, you know, I have times where I know when I can help people, and I have times when I know that I'm not in the right place, but I don't beat myself up. But I know that if I look after, you know, people when they're in need, someone will come to me. Do you know what I mean? It's like karma. And I think it's just creating that honesty, you know, to be able to share, because I think we all are suffering in silence. I don't think we can wait for the government, we know that. So we have to just do it ourselves, I think.
Thank you, Amira. Anyone else got any final thoughts, and we'll wrap this up?
You know, I think I want to say one more thing. And I think it's because Amira said something earlier and I didn't acknowledge it when she said it's about love. And I think that's it, full stop. You know, that is it. It is about love, because when we really truly love somebody and we love people unconditionally, it doesn't matter how they come to us. You know, it doesn't, you know, come to me when you're broken and I'll be the same as when you come to me when you're joyful. That's what it's about. And I think that's what needs, yeah, that's the injection, isn't it, to our next generation, unconditional love. So I'll leave that where it's at.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, just wanted to say, I think what it's shown me today is that I need to do a little bit more as well for my community. You know, I mean, the sound therapy is good, people get a lot from it, but maybe I need to do something else to help people feel held, and then I will feel held as well. You know, can't just expect it to come to me if I'm not doing it myself. So taking responsibility for that, seeing where I have failed others in that way as well.
Love on yourself as well. I'm imagining you holding a silver tent for grandmothers, and where it's you one week and then another week and another week. So not you just taking the lead all the time, but for you to call in this group that's equal. You know, there's equanimity and each one takes a turn at being the holder. Just dreaming that in for you, Maria, because you so deserve it.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a little thought that came to me when we were talking before. You know, when we talk about defining belonging, it was how can we belong when we don't belong to ourselves? And there were so many different expressions of that in those conversations. You know, like Lisa saying she's got a different face for different people. You know, so if you're never embodying your authentic self and you don't feel safe to them, yeah, how can we belong, really? So it really is, as much as it's an external need, it's also starts from within, doesn't it? And I think it's creating that safe space for us to start being able to express and embody our truth and work on a collective solution, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This like seesaw, isn't it? Seesaw, like everything's so out of balance at the minute because we have to do it all on our own. But if we could get a bit of feedback from the community, that could then strengthen us a little bit. Like, we've all come here to share today, and we've interrelated, connected, we've depended on each other's honesty. So we're not the one that stands out, but we've done it all together, and it's emboldened us. So now maybe we can go off, but then we need that feedback again, like, validation, like, it's okay, and then we can do a bit more and maybe encourage the next person to be a bit more real and point it out, and then give ourselves permission to have this voice to call out the lack of integrity in community and in spiritual communities, especially, at this time, and, to be brave and bold enough to point out these things, not to judge and to shame and blame, but to turn and look at what's really needed so that we can really get on with the depth of growth that, is available and potential. Wow, so much, so rich. I just, I'm just so grateful for this space, for you coming on, for you being so brave, for you sharing all of this time, of your precious lives. And I've felt like I've belonged today, and I hope that you have. And, just trusting in the medicine of this podcast to you listeners. You've been on a journey listening to this podcast that you've got some healing from it, that you feel emboldened as well. And, just encouraging everyone to get in touch. Remember, the Facebook Motherhood Rawful But True page is there as this collective space, a hub for us to come together. And, who knows, as the podcast gets bigger and bigger, maybe we could have a map somewhere of listeners and, mums who want to connect with other mums, so we can set up this network, maybe if people are in the same locality, or if they want to start groups, or all that sort, to get on the Facebook page or get in touch with me, and we'll see what we can do about that. Just really feel so blessed to have the privilege of the opportunity to create this space and bring you together, and it's just such an honor. So thank you so much for all coming on. And I'm Rainbow, and this is Maria, and this is Dawn, and this is Lisa, and this is Amira, and we've been Rawful But True. Could you?